Hi guys, so I'm going to read Danger Trail number 2. This was published in October of 1950. So Danger Trail, worldwide adventures in mystery and intrigue. King Faraday. Most of the characters I've ever read about wore out their shoe leather, running away from prisons. But I have to do things the hard way. And in this latest mission, I spent all my time trying to get into prison. The place wasn't a rest home. But then, I wasn't there for a rest. At least, I hoped it wouldn't be a permanent one. In Hangman's house. I was drifting down Lower Fifth Avenue when the gleaming half of a 1900 quarter dropped at my feet. A one-bit piece. The SOS signal of my old buddies and the paratroops. One of them must be around and doesn't want it broadcast. I pocketed the coin, glanced at my watch, exclaimed as if I just remembered I had 10 minutes in which to straighten out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And, King Faraday! Jimmy West, I haven't seen you since the outfit's last reunion. What gives?
I knew you'd pick my cue, King, but we can relax now. The driver is a government man, same as me. You'll understand the reason for the Cloak and Dagger Act when I tell you why I called you. First, ever hear of Arnold Leroy?
Who hasn't? He's the scientist who bats in Einstein's league. It was a tough break for the world when he fell out of that train in the Tyrol. Was Leroy's body ever found, Jim?
No, for the simple reason that the accident was a phony. The eyewitnesses, part of the deception. Arnold Leroy is alive at this very moment.
Alive, but a prisoner
in Hangman's house.
So, the Butcher Boys have kidnapped him. He hasn't a chance. No insurance company in the world would give him a policy.
No, King. You're wrong. They'll keep him alive until they siphon every scrap of information out of him. Then they'll turn it all against us. Alive, in their hands, Arnold Leroy is a greater threat to us than a hydrogen bomb. Someone's got to get him out of there. Fast. Before it's too late. And if that someone should get into trouble after he gets over there, he can't count on us for help. Well, King, what's your answer?
How about lighting a cigarette? For someone. After whispering instructions, Jimmy left to throw off any possible shadowers. I was at the rendezvous point an hour later, but so were a couple of other guys. There's Jimmy, right on time. The car's sticking closer to him than a corn plaster. I wonder if... I didn't have to wonder long. Jimmy went right past me, as if I wasn't there. The car was tailing him, and he didn't want to put the finger on me by stopping. But the hoods in the car must have become afraid that he would get away, because they suddenly opened up on him. I had fought side by side with Jimmy, long enough to read his mind at this moment. His driver was gone, and it was his turn next. But, if he was going out, he would do so in a way that would lead the homicidal hounds away from me. Jimmy braked to a sudden stop, making them crash into him. One of the rod men was still on his feet after the crash. He ran out to make sure no one in the taxi would ever stand again. I called him. "Cleaning up, Joe? Where's your apron?" Joe didn't like my sense of humor. He showed his disapproval in no uncertain way. I disagreed with him. Our disagreement suddenly ended when my gun was blasted from my hand. It looked like this assignment was over before it began.
Better not miss, Joe, because I'm not stopping. But I was speaking to the little man, who wasn't there. Joe wasn't living here anymore. Blasting the gun out of my grip, evidently that was the last score he would ever make in this league. But he had taken a good guy with him. One of the best. You were sensational, Jimmy. I'll never be able to fill your boots. But I'll do my best not to disappoint you. So long, pal. 10 minutes later, I was at police headquarters. I answered no questions until Colonel Danby, the government man Jimmy told me to contact if ever I needed help, arrived. He explained things satisfactorily, and I was released. 30 minutes later, we were taking off from a hidden field along the East Coast. What's our next stop, Colonel?
Your next stop, Faraday. Hangman's house. Here are snapshots of Arnold Leroy. Memorize them. The same goes for the info on the contacts I'm going to give you, to be used when and if you get out. But I warn you, I'm going to change them 48 hours after you land, to protect them, in case Hangman's house persuades you to tell everything you know.
Check. Halfway across the Atlantic, Colonel Danby and I got into an argument over the potency of hypnosis. I thought I had won my point by quickly putting the co-pilot to sleep, but the colonel still scoffed at my claims on behalf of self-hypnosis. He loaned me a pocket mirror, however, the shiny object without which I could not conduct my experiment. And your eyes are heavy, heavy. Soon you will close them. Close them. As the colonel and the co-pilot later told me, I placed myself in a deep enough stage of hypnosis so that my arm was absolutely rigid.
Well, he's certainly under all right. This will break anyone's arm who wasn't hypnotized.
To top off my act, I'd given myself a post-hypnotic suggestion, and an hour after I had snapped out of it, I glanced at my watch, yawned, picked the colonel up, and, "Out you go, pussy. It's time to go to bed."
He did it, just as he said he would. I'm convinced. All right, Faraday, you win. Put me down.
Then, the Atlantic was behind us, and the time for my jump was tapping at my back with icy fingers.
We're going to drop you just inside the river that marks their territory, King. It's dark. You won't be seen. I'm not going to tell you how urgent it is to get Arnold Leroy out. I'd rather see him dead than in their hands. He'd be better off, and so would free men everywhere.
I understand. Then the plane banked, and I was out, reaching for the longest step in the world.
Chute's not opening. Hope I don't have to ask for a refund.
I lived my whole life over 7 times, making the same mistakes each time. Before my emergency chute opened, by the time I was close enough to the water to see my reflection in it. There's Hangman's house. They couldn't have made a better drop with a Norden bomb sight. Falling into the water wasn't on the schedule, but it was all for the best. By the time I reached Hangman's house, I looked as shop-worn as the townspeople. I was challenged twice, but my papers were in order. And later, when I scouted the area, I discovered that rock pile is as tough to get into as a bank after closing time. The town had the feeling of a country at war. The shooting going on behind locked doors. Not being able to get into the hangman's house may turn out to be as fatal as not being able to get out of it. I drifted into a night spot to think things over. That officer's as jealous about that thrush as a kid with a bag of marbles. By his insignia, I'd say he was attached to the prison. That gives me an idea. I waited until the thrush shook a tired old song to death, then applauded as if she were a female Caruso. My admiration caught her ear. Her eye met mine, and her boyfriend began to smoke as she waltzed over to my table. A voice as wonderful as yours, mademoiselle, has the power to light up the world, as it already has my heart.
Oh, how gallant!
I fed her all the corny routines I had ever heard on Times Square, and she lapped them up like a tabby diving into its first saucer of milk. My act lasted for about 5 minutes before her smoking boyfriend burst into flames, and
Swine!
he was so mad he probably couldn't see when he swung at me, but I kept both of my eyes open.
I'll teach you to make a fool of me!
Anyone could do that without instruction. You're such a simple subject. When I hit the officer, the people gasped as if I'd thrown a rock into the window of the Bank of England. They melted away, in choking fear of what was to follow.
He fights well for a civilian. He should be in the army.
No, the Navy! Let's launch him! I table the motion. I fought to keep those uninformed hoods busy while I waited, with my back a sheet of ice, for the thrush's boyfriend to get up off the floor and make his presence known. And he did.
You'll live long enough to regret striking me, idiot!
I rolled with the blow and played possum while I was tossed into a jeep and then a motorboat. Slowly, I peered through slitted eyes. My plan had succeeded, for we were heading for Hangman's house. Just then I spotted an oblong object drop from the top of the prison. I was soon enlightened about the hurtling object.
Another guest of Hangman's house leaving through the only exit. In a sewed-up shack!
This new guest doesn't know what entertainment is in store for him, but he'll learn soon.
I was thoroughly searched for weapons before they dumped me into a cell, but I was unarmed, except for half of a 1900 quarter, Jimmy's, clenched in my hand, which they had overlooked. When they left, I turned my palm up and let the coin gleam in it. I felt the turnkey's eyes staring at me through the peephole. Hours passed, but I didn't stir, even when the turnkey entered to reach for the coin. Then,
"It might be valuable, and he won't have any use for it, and he..."
I shut off his wind long enough to warn him what would happen if he didn't obey my orders instantly. Then I took his gun, pressed it against his side, and walked out of the cell with him. Take me to Arnold Leroy's cell. If we meet anyone, tell them you're taking me for questioning. Now move! I'm in a draft. If I sneeze, I might blow your head off. We crept up one long flight of stone steps and down another, each passing second strangling a beat of my heart. And all about me, silence was filled with threatening voices. Then, finally, he was fumbling at a cell door in the prison tower, the huge metal key rattling in the lock, so he couldn't turn it.
The scientist is here!
Relax. Nothing will happen to you as long as you obey orders. The turnkey was the most relaxed man I'd ever met. He certainly caught me flat-footed as he turned and handed me the key to his city.
on my jaw.
"You'd better open the door. I'm too nervous. Here." Ugh.
I was too busy listening to the chorus of mammalian canaries to have done much if my playmate had decided to flatten me permanently with another blow.
"Fool! Once I have that gun."
Instead, he made the mistake of reaching for the gun, and all I had to do was give it to him. Here it is, but not for keeps. No sooner had I dragged him into the cell and closed the door than I heard a stifled moan. It came from Arnold Leroy as he tried to claw into the wall.
No, don't, please. I can't stand it any longer."
It looks as if I didn't get here a second too soon. It took me a long time to convince the trembling prisoner that it wasn't just another trick, and that I wasn't another jailer come out of the dark to torment him.
I'll do anything to get out of here. Anything. I'd rather be dead than...
I'll get you out, Professor Leroy. But first, you must get some rest. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep without fear. Just leave everything to me, and sleep. 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 I put him under deep hypnosis until, when I set him down on the cot, he looked as if he had no more life in him than a rag doll. Then, the turnkey's coming too! Everything now depended on the turnkey. He was groggy and easy to work with, but I had a lot of things to plant in his mind. If he failed to do a single one of them, the professor and I were finished. And with him, the peace of mind of the world, perhaps. You are asleep, asleep, fast asleep, but you will wake up soon, and when you will wake up, you will see 2 dead men on the floor. 2 dead men. And when I finished with the turnkey's post-hypnotic suggestion, I left him asleep in the corner and looked for a shiny object with which to hypnotize myself. There's nothing here. Nothing. No mirror, no drinking cup, no light bulb. The door and bars are dull metal. My belt buckle. No, it's leather. What will I use? And then Jimmy came to my rescue a second time, with his coin. I stared at its gleaming surface, and dervishes hypnotize themselves until they can pass needles through their flesh without drawing blood, until they can walk over red-hot coals without a burn, until they can be buried alive for days without harm. You can do it. You can do it. Time was running out, and more than our lives with it. While I lullabied myself into the deepest state of self-hypnosis possible. And then, as I slumped down beside the professor, the turnkey began waking up.
What?
I could only imagine what happened there after. But since I knew what the complete jigsaw puzzle of this mission finally looked like, I could visualize the separate pieces. They must have started with the turnkey walking out of his hypnosis and responding to the post-hypnotic suggestion I had given him.
I can't hear a heartbeat. He's dead too. I must have killed them when they tried to escape. But the commandant will hold me responsible. That would be easier than what they'll do to me. I've got to get rid of the bodies.
We must have been taken to the only exit through which a prisoner leaves Hangman's house, given farewell outfits, then wished bon voyage.
I can't be blamed if they disappeared into thin air. Ha ha ha!
I didn't need a post-hypnotic suggestion to wake up.
and immediately start getting out of the sack before it became my shroud. The impact of hitting the water turned the alarm clock of my consciousness on. And for the last time, Jimmy's coin helped. Its jagged edge helping me cut through the sack. Got to get to the professor. With my brain warning me it would seek a new tenant if I continued to imitate a fish, I tore my way through the professor's sack and started up with him. Think I hear propeller overhead. As I popped to the surface with the professor, I don't know who was more surprised, the pilot of the patrol boat or me. The smiling lieutenant. You swine! He should have known that he couldn't lean all the way over like that and still keep his balance. Now with me encouraging him to join the water frolic. I'll visit you with pleasure! The pleasure's all mine, since it seemed as if the lieutenant would have no further use for his boat. I borrowed it, and trying to get the professor aboard, just as the boys back at Handman's house suddenly woke up and tried to persuade me to stay. Leave me! You've done enough! Professor, I thought you liked me. By the time I finally yanked the professor aboard, all I could think of was sending a postcard with, "Wish I wasn't here." Keep down, Professor. Never can tell when one of them might stop to take aim. As we near the other side of the river, the shooting from behind us suddenly stopped. They've given up. We've escaped. No, Professor. They think they've really got us now. Look ahead of us. One of their patrol boats had flanked us and was now blocking our way to freedom. They probably figured we couldn't return their fire, and they were right. Surrender before we blow you out of the water! I know my reply wasn't original, but if it was good enough for the 101st Airborne at Bastogne, it was good enough for me. Nuts! The only reason we were able to walk away from that crash was because a couple of cats must have been kind enough to lend us some of their 9 lives. The firing evidently had attracted attention, for my contacts rushed forward to greet us when we reached the safety of the shore. What a photo finish, King. You're the only man ever to have crashed out of the hangman's house. How did you do it? Chalk it up to an old pal of mine. I thought I was due for a holiday, but I was mistaken. I thought this last mission was tough, but I was mistaken again. See what I mean in the next issue of Danger Trail. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, that'd be appreciated. If you have any requests you want me to do, just let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys later.